stories. I used to get bullied, and so did pretty much all of my friends. I've witnessed some of it, and I couldn't believe how cruel and degrading people could be. It wasn't a shock when Sally, my best friend, brought up a boy she had made friends with in conversation. We were on holiday at the time, and I already knew this kid. He was quiet, pretty smart, awkward, and clearly sad. She explained how he got bullied for his voice, and how his ex-girlfriend was spreading rumors that he was faking a condition, and that he didn't really sound like that. She wanted to know if she could let him sit with us at lunch because he usually didn't have anyone to sit with. I obviously agreed to it, not really knowing that much about him. I had talked to him a couple of times, and he seemed pretty happy about having someone to talk to, but I couldn't see any personality when I talked to him. Everything he did just seemed odd, like it wasn't really him. I know that sounds weird, but that's how I felt. His name was Samuel, an unusual name, but quite nice. He seemed like a kind person, but he still had that weird feeling about him. After a while of talking to him, Sally and I got to know him better. He liked dark jokes, much like me. He was really into Doctor Who. None of us really knew much about it, but we still let him talk about his interests, so that he would feel more comfortable around us. He talked a lot. I didn't even realize he had feelings for Sally until he asked me if she likes Harry Potter, and what her favorite colors are. She soon realized this too, but she had just gotten over a boy, so she made it clear that she wasn't interested. He wouldn't leave her alone, always next to her, somewhere nearby. It started to get to her, and she hated it. She felt as though she could not be alone, so I tried to do something about it. I wanted to help, so I turned his attention from her to me. I started hanging out with him more often, listening to his terrible, unfunny jokes, to his strange interest, to everything he said. I tried to make it seem like I wanted to be there, even though, at this point, I really did not. I wanted to get away from him. He was beginning to tire me out emotionally. With him constantly being there, somewhere near me, he wouldn't leave me alone. He even walked home with me and my friend Grace, despite the fact he walks in the opposite way to get to his house. At one point, I was going through a particular hard time, and being desperate for help and someone to talk to, I turned to him. I knew it was the wrong move, but desperation led me to make that move. He asked to video call me, so I agreed. I was crying. He tried to calm me down. Eventually he did, and just started making his horrible jokes, talking about things I liked, and stuff he actually shouldn't have known about. I began to think he wasn't so bad after all, and that we just didn't like him for what he did to Sally, but maybe he wasn't like that. I started talking to him through video almost every day after school, and I noticed him being around even more often. One day he said he needed to tell me something, which turned out to be his confession. He confessed that he had a crush on me, but I had to go because my mom wanted to watch a movie. When I returned, I had about 10 video and voice messages from him. All of them were him apologizing because he apparently thought I hadn't actually left to go watch a movie, but was instead avoiding him because of what he told me. I felt horrible. I didn't mean to upset him. He was crying. I explained that I really went to watch a movie, and that's why I was gone. Fortunately, he understood. After a while of hanging out with him, I began to get tired of him. with him constantly being there, and now also knowing that he was crushing on me, I looked back to the situation with Sally. I began to spot the same things in our friendship. He got clingy and just downright annoying. I politely explained to him that I didn't want to sit with him at lunch anymore, but he still insisted that I sat with him. I declined and just told him to go away every time he approached our table. One particular incident made me lose all respect for him, though. He would sometimes randomly walk with me in Grace, as I mentioned before, but this time it was different. Outside was a thick mist, but even I could see it. And according to my friends who have looked through my glasses, I am technically blind. Samuel didn't wear glasses or contacts because there is nothing wrong with his eyes. Well, we walked all the way to Grace's house and we said our goodbyes. I often stayed at her house after school, and we would watch weird videos we found in her recommended. About an hour into being there, we hear a knock at the door. She goes to answer it thinking it's her parents. Needless to say, it wasn't her parents, it was Samuel. I heard his voice and dropped to the floor, hoping he hadn't seen me. After a long while of silence, I proceeded to army crawl over to the door to see if he was still there, and lo and behold, he was. Hello, his voice echoed in my mind at this point. I began to crawl back. I'm lost, I can't find my house. Can you guys help me? He asked. Liar. How could he possibly not know where his house is? And it's not like I knew where it is. I'd never been there. He persisted and continued to knock on Grace's door. We came to the decision that we would hide in the conservatory until he goes away, and so we did. Some time passed before Grace chose to climb onto a desk to see if he was still there. I jumped back when she yelped and stumbled off the desk, almost knocking me over. She turned to look at me and pointed in the direction she was looking. He's still there. He was looking directly at me. He fucking waved at me, she whispered. No way, I whispered back. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't happening. We weren't trapped by him. He wasn't outside. This was all just a joke or something, but Grace's face looked so scared, and in an angry way as well. I awkwardly got my stuff and told her I was going to head out to get him the hell away from her house. She reluctantly agreed, and I left with him. I offered to walk him down to the shop and let him go from there, but he refused to let me leave. He told me he couldn't see very well, and that he almost got hit by a car earlier. Bullshit. This boy had boasted many times about how good his eyesight was. There was no way he suddenly couldn't see. Despite his apparent sight problem, he flawlessly led me to his house. At this point, I was in an area completely unknown to me, and I began to worry. How would I get home? It was really dark, and there was no way I was going to wander an area I had never been in, especially in the dark. Who knows what kind of creeps could have been hiding out there. I brought this up to him, and he assured me that his mom would drop me off. I did not want that. I didn't want him to know where I lived. With how he was acting, I was fully convinced he would try to pull something. I suffer from symptoms of schizophrenia, and this didn't at all make it better for me. I felt unbelievably unsafe at that moment, and wished that I hadn't left Grace's, and explained it to my mom later. I was sure she'd understand. Countless minutes dragged on as I sat and waited in his room, surrounded by his cats. They were the only thing keeping me from snapping and just trying to make my way back home on my own. Soon enough, his mom arrived. and agreed to drop me off, seeing how distressed I looked. She offered me some chocolates and assured me that I would be fine. She must have thought that she was the problem. It was not her. He was in the car. He would know where I lived now. I wanted to cry. This brought back so many horrible memories with stalkers I'd had in the past. He was so much like all of them. His eyes gave me that horrible feeling of hopelessness, and I hated it. After they dropped me off at my house, I went to my mom and broke out in tears. I couldn't take it anymore. He went too far this time. My mom said that she was going to report him for that, because he wasn't going to cause me this much stress and get away with it. I agreed at that time, but soon after I asked my mom to just forget it. Maybe this would all go away. It did not. The next day I told him that I wasn't allowed to talk to him anymore because my mom told me not to, but he still refused to leave me alone. I obviously got mad due to having enough of his shit, and had a complete mental breakdown saying that I was going to get Tim, my boyfriend, on him because I was done. Grace and Felicity tried to take me to our most trusted teachers, but a few other teachers, despite seeing me crying hysterically, refused to let us through because she probably won't be able to help. So, we found another teacher and explained the whole situation to her. She assured me that she would speak with him and attempt to get this sorted. Throughout the entirety of my geography class, I was having major anxiety, but I calmed down a bit in math. When lunch came about, I saw Grace standing next to the door, holding Samuel's stuff. "What the fuck is this about?" I questioned. "I don't know. He just dumped it on me and left. Now he's in the toilet," she told me. Then one of my male friends who knew about the situation, Chad, approached us and offered to take his stuff while we leave. I thanked him a million times, and we hurried away. We reached the hall and sat down at the table where Sally and Felicity were, and everything seemed fine until he showed up again. He seemed pretty angry, so I assumed the teacher we spoke to had talked to him. I began to panic, thinking that this wouldn't end well, that we were all in danger. Then Rafita walked over to him, attempting to save me from an episode. She told him that I don't feel alright and that he should probably go. But he completely ignored her and asked me if I wanted food. I nervously shook my head. He started saying that he was going to pass out and that he needs to sit down. Rafita calmly told him that he can sit down somewhere else because this isn't the best time. He turned to her, fury in his eyes, and yelled, "Now!" I hid my face in my hands. I felt weak, like I was going to start hyperventilating. He sat down, and Rafita, having had enough of his shit, grabbed my arm and said, "Come on, let's go." While dragging me away, the others followed. He also left the hall, but luckily he didn't follow us. Then, all of the built-up stress and anger caused me to start hyperventilating and crying because I felt like I'd put not only myself but the others in danger. I didn't know what to do anymore. Then Chad came and said that he'll talk to him for me and asked him to sit with him instead of us. Once again, I thanked him with all my heart, and we went back into the hall. One of my old friends, Shayla, came up to us, and we told her about the entire situation. She told us that this wasn't the first time something like this had happened, and that he had a book in which he wrote about plans for mass homicide, and that he calls it Samuelism. Then Chad returned and told me that Samuel wants to talk to me after science and how I probably should. So after science, I waited for him, and he said he hadn't realized he was causing a problem. Shut up. Of course you did. How can you be so damn oblivious to your own actions? He then proceeded to tell me about how bad his day was, and I ended up having to walk with him to the office. I told Tim about it, and he said that he would meet me after school on Wednesday and sort it out if he doesn't stop. I was very thankful for this. I just wanted Samuel out of my life. He still wouldn't leave me alone after all of that. He even specifically moved next to me in English class. After everything that had happened on Friday, he still persisted with his little game. That day was parents' evening at school, so I went with my mom and left my phone at home. When I got back and looked at my phone, my heart dropped. 20 messages, all from Samuel. I started ranting about all of this to myself, and even went in the bathroom to practice what I was going to say to him the next day. I started crying again, because all of this was just too much to bear. Then I decided to do something. I decided to call him out on all of this stuff and inform him that a troubled childhood isn't an excuse to put someone in this situation. He actually tried to guilt trip me into forgiving him by telling me about his awful childhood, and I admit that I felt bad for him, because no one should have to go through that kind of pain. But to show him that he isn't the only one who has dealt with things in the past, I told him about myself, halfway through me explaining that I had a lot of trouble showing and experiencing emotions as a child, and that I had a lot of violent homicidal thoughts. He interrupted me, saying that he also didn't have emotions, and that he had tried to kill someone because he thought it was funny. This actually pissed me off, because not only was he interrupting me to add to his story and try to make me feel even worse, he was trying to one-up me on my suffering. If you ask me, that is absolutely disgusting. You don't compare struggles, because you only have your own experiences to go off. Don't try to make another person feel as though their problems don't matter, and that they shouldn't ask for help with their problems because they are too small. That is just wrong. I calmly told him that I let him finish his story without interruptions, and that it was only fair for him to let me finish mine that way too. He quickly apologized, being caught out on his bullshit. I told him the rest of my story and let him realize that he really wasn't the only one who had gone through stuff in his childhood. He then began begging me for another chance at being my friend. I declined and decided to talk with Sally instead, ignoring the rest of his messages. Every day until this point, and even for a while after, was just me feeling like I was going to die. I actually contemplated suicide for a while because I couldn't deal with his constant presence. I was afraid to leave my house because I felt like he would be there. I know this is a bit weird, but I felt that way because of my schizophrenia. My episodes began getting more frequent and severe. There were periods of time where I could not concentrate in class and actually couldn't hear what the teacher was saying because of my auditory hallucinations. Yeah, crystal meth does that to you. I generally felt like shit, and it got so bad that I felt like I didn't want to be here anymore. But after telling him to bug off, I felt like a giant weight was removed from my chest and that I could breathe my own air again. Not long enough though, because he kept trying to come back into my life despite me refusing to be his friend ever again. I was still there for him, but only in absolute emergencies. If you don't want someone in your fucking life, you don't make them a part of your life. That includes emergencies. You being there in emergencies shows him that you do want him in your life. So you're just leading this motherfucker on. By emergencies, I mean that only if he was on the verge of dying. I wish I could say that he left me alone since then, and that I never saw him after that, but I can't because I still see him around at school, and unfortunately, his friends are friends with my friend Brian, so I still have to hang out around him, which sucks. We'll just stop being friends with Brian. He annoys me purposely to get my attention by calling himself God and other things that suggest he thinks way too highly of himself. Anyway, this is about it for my story. Samuel, please shut up about your godly status for a second and realize that the reason people hate you is because you do this shit. Not once, not twice, but always. So pause, think, and stop so that you don't melt any more brains. My friend group would meet in the library every morning at the same spot, and he had decided to come and talk with this friend one random morning. Apparently he had confessed to her, but she rejected him, but seemed to be on good terms. When I met him, I had this horrible gut feeling. I mean, he seemed nice enough, but the way he looked at me with his beady eyes creeped me out. I noticed that he seemed to be talking a little different to me in comparison to my friends, in a flirty kind of way. When he introduced himself, fast forward a month where I didn't see him and our friend group started meeting in the hallway instead in the mornings. That's when I started noticing him showing up more and more and starting to get more and more creepy and flirty. Then one day he found out I had the same lunch period as him, but we ate in different places, and he offered to sit next to me. I said sure, 'cause I'm overly nice and didn't want to hurt his feelings. But man, was that a bad idea. So I'm gonna just say something about all of these stories. All of you girls always talk about how nice you are. Oh, I'm overly nice and I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Girls here in Florida, they don't give a fuck if they hurt your feelings. If they didn't want to sit next to this motherfucker, they'd be like, get the fuck away from me, motherfucker. I hate you, you're creepy. I don't understand where this, oh, I'm too nice shit comes from. Y'all need to stop being so fucking nice. Stop leading motherfuckers on. And even if you're leading them on unintentionally, you need to stop doing that shit too. These chicks here in Florida, they would break this motherfucker's nose. They'd kick this motherfucker in the balls, pepper spray this motherfucker, and call the cops on him for harassment if they didn't want to talk to this motherfucker. Straight up. I don't understand this, oh, I'm too nice, so I didn't say nothing to him, or I didn't want to hurt his feelings. Shit, I wish that somebody would spare my feelings once in a while, but these motherfuckers around here, they don't give a fuck. He sat directly next to me in the cafeteria, leaning his body so that he was touching me with his leg and arms. I was so uncomfortable. He kept asking me more and more about me, and I just felt more and more creeped out. I stuck it out in the end and just left. Yeah, yet again, if this motherfucker was in Florida, they would have just broke this motherfucker's nose. Besides that, there was also a time where he would see me and follow me to class and ask me a billion things. I stuck that out too, but realizing it now, I should have just told him to leave me alone, but whatever. Anyway, the big thing that happened was when I went to meet my friend group, I saw him. As soon as he saw me, I saw that beady look in his eyes again, and I immediately just turned away. This was after days of this guy following me and constantly showing up near my friend group every morning. However, I felt like today was enough and I just turned around. My friends were upset because they thought I was upset with them. But I explained to them after that it was him, not them. However, that morning was special because I learned something else as well. My friend told me later that he was visibly upset, and when she saw that she asked if he liked me, he said he loved me, and that he wanted to spend even more time with me. I found this interesting since this was the same friend who, even though I told her he was creeping me out, that he probably just thought of me as a friend after that, started to believe my side of the story. Anyway, he asked for my number and I gave it to him, only so I could text him. I didn't like him. I didn't want him to bother me as much. However, he still followed me anywhere. After that, I completely ignored him. I literally would not even answer a single question, but he still would not quit. Yeah, well, here's another thing that I don't fucking understand, and this goes for all of you women out there. If you don't like a motherfucker, why the fuck do you give him your goddamn number and then bitch that he texts too goddamn much? Just don't give him your fucking number. Anyway, I ended up graduating and that was that. I never saw him or spoke to him again except for the time I found his Facebook, which brought back a lot of bad memories. P.S. So about my friend earlier, who confessed to, well, I also found out he had confessed his love to 7 girls. So not only was he creepy to me, he was also a serial creepy stalker as well. No, he wasn't. It's not impossible to be in love with more than one person, or to fall out of love with one person and to fall in love with someone else. Just because he said that he was in love with 7 different girls does not make him creepy or a stalker. You need to learn what the fuck being a stalker is, and you need to learn what the fuck being creepy is. I am a 13-year-old boy, and I have a blushing problem, that I blush really easily. I have little friends, so when I go to get fast food, I usually go by myself. A few months ago, I was alone at Burger King. I was sitting at the back seat, so no one would see me. Then, this one boy with curly blonde hair came up to me and said hi twice in a very gay voice. Wow, this is not homophobic at all. It made me think uncomfortable, so I just ignored him. I know that I have seen him a couple of times, but never in school. He looked younger than me, but I have no balls to do anything. He probably went to another school near my house. Today I went to McDonald's and I sat there for a while watching YouTube. I don't have a lot of money, so I got some fries and a water cup. I sat in the back and snuck soda instead of water. Then I saw the same gay kid, but he was a friend. They sat across from me and talked to each other. Whenever I looked at the kid or his friend, we always made eye contact. Okay, so what? What else can happen? Then the kids stood up and went to me, and they kept looking at me. Then they made a sharp U-turn and went back to their seats. A few minutes passed and they stood up again. This time they came up to me and sat by me. I blushed, and then I stood up and walked to a different seat. The kid and his friend followed me and sat by me again. I had to muster up the courage to ask, "Can I help you?" And the friend said, "No." Then the kid started asking about what I was watching. I answered, and then there was silence. Then the kid and his friend started looking at my phone. I blushed but kept quiet. Then the kid asked why I had a water cup, and there was soda inside. I told him it was a small soda, but he showed me that his friend had one and I was lying. I blushed again. Then the friend asked for my phone, and I said no. He said that he'll call the cops if I don't give him my phone. So I told him to to do it. Both of them were talking very loud, and then I think that they were trying to get my attention. I was going to get out of my seat and was going to call my friend, Dennis. I stood up, but the kid blocked my way. He asked where I was going, and I said, "Why do you care?" He let me go, but him and his friend followed. I went to the bathroom and was going to call my friend when they also came in, so I went in the stall, and when I was going to close the door, the kid stopped the door from closing. I decided to try to close the door, which I did. Then I decided to text my friend if I can come over and tell him the story. He said, "Sure, why not?" The kid's friend decided to try to crawl under the stall to me, so I opened the door and ran out. The kid tried grabbing me by my shirt, but he missed. I got on my bike and rushed to my friend's house. I don't know what to do if I see this kid again. Break his nose. Should I tell an employee to tell the kid to stop following me? Should I run out? Should I get friends and go out with them? Or should I get the balls to ask them to leave and try to force them? I don't know. Please give me some advice, because I don't want this to happen again. Break his nose.